Alright, so it's time to get your hands on some tape. So I'm going to run through some tapings with you. First I want to mention that I'm using my non-stick Teflon coated scissors, and the reason that I'm using these is because the tape is really sticky, so it can make regular scissors become gummed up pretty quickly, and when they become gummed up it's really difficult to cut through the tape. So if you have some non-stick scissors, use those for sure, and if you don't have some, you'll probably want to think about getting some. So first I'm going to run through the different cuttings with you. So if you remember, we can do an I cutting, an X cutting, a Y cutting, and a fan cutting. So we're going to start with the I. Now if you have some tape on hand, I encourage you to pull the tape out and run through these cuttings with me at this time. So when we're doing an I cutting, we're just going to measure it out to the length, whatever length we need. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to cut the tape. So we're just going to cut it straight across. And we have a piece of tape that looks like an eye. As I mentioned in the PowerPoints, what we like to do is round off the corners just to make it a little bit neater and prevent it from sticking on anything. So we're just going to go ahead and round those corners off. And there's our eye piece of tape. So we're going to set that aside. We did the eye. So the next one that we're going to do is the X. So we're going to cut a piece that's big enough for where we're taping. And we're just going to cut it straight across like we did with the eye. But this time what we're going to do is I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to cut it straight down the middle. We're going to go straight down the middle with it, just like this. And we're going to cut it about that high. We want to leave a base in the center, so we're not going to cut it straight through. We're just going to go about that high. Then we're going to open it up and see that this is what we have. We have two little projections here, looking like an X. We're going to go ahead and round those guys off as well. Round that off. And then we're going to set this guy aside. So there's our X. We have our X cutting. So the next one that we're going to do is the Y. So again, we're going to cut a piece straight across. And now this time we're just going to cut one side, not both, so we're not going to fold it in half. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut it up to about that far, because again we want a base, so we just got a little bit of a cut right there. And then we're going to round our base and round the little fingers. Good. And now we have our Y. It's our Y cutting. So the next one that we're going to do is the fan. The fan's going to be the more complicated one to actually cut. But we're going to cut it like the eye cutting, and then we're just going to look at the paper on the back, and we're going to cut, about 5 finger projections is what we're trying to do. So just kind of have to measure it out. The more you cut these, the more used to it you get. But we're going to cut up to about right there because we want to leave a base, and we're just going to cut out these little finger projections. And I'm cutting these a little thin, so normally I would do them just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to get more than 5 on this one. We're going to cut those out, so it's going to kind of look like a little octopus guy. We're going to round off the top, and that's our fan cutting. That's what it looks like when we cut that up. So I'm going to set that aside as well. So now what we're going to talk about is how to properly handle the tape as far as tearing the paper. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll want to just kind of try to pull this off, and it's really difficult to do it that way. The best way to handle the tape is if you're laying down a big piece of eye tape is we're going to just tear the paper right here at the base. I'm just going to rip it straight across like that. So see, it's torn off right there. And then what we can do is we can take off this piece of paper, and I can lay the base down. So I'm going to lay it down here on my arm. We're just going to lay it down, and we're going to rub it down to activate the glue. That's going to ensure that it'll stick better. Then you see there's still paper left under here. What we're going to do is we're just going to grab the end of that paper, and we're going to pull the paper off as we lay it down on the skin. Just going to pull it off, and as we do, we're just kind of rub that tape down and pull it all the way off. And then we're going to rub that down so that it sticks better. Now that's the proper way to remove the paper and to lay down the tape. See, I got that piece of tape on me now. So I'm going to pull pull this off so we can do the next one. So now we're going to put down the X. So now what I like to do with the X is a lot of times you'll see in the support applications is we will have 50% stretch in the center. So what I like to do there is I tear the paper directly across the center. So we're just going to tear it straight through like that. See how it's torn right there? And then I'll pull that up a little bit just so that the base is exposed. And what I'll do is I'll stretch the center part like this as I'm laying it down. Okay, so we're going to put some stretch on it as we lay it down. Let's say that we're laying it down. So then, for demonstration purposes, let's say that I was able to stretch that. I kind of need both hands to do that as I'm laying it down, but let's say that I did. Then what I would do is I would pull off the end pieces of paper and lay down these finger projections. And you can take those and you can just kind of move them off to the side so that it's hugging the joint or the muscle that you're trying to support, and lay them down like that. And then same thing with the top ones. You can lay them down just like that. So that would be the proper way to lay down and handle the X cut. So next we're going to move on to the Y cut, and the Y cut's going to be, kind of similar to the I and the X. What we're going to do here is we're going to pull off the paper down here at the base, so we're going to tear it right at the base where those little finger projections start to come off. And then we're going to remove this piece of paper. That's going to be our base. And we're going to lay the base down. So we'll lay the base down, we'll rub it down, and then we'll just remove each part of this little Y finger projection one at a time. So I'm going to pull the paper off and put the tape down as I'm pulling the paper off, and then I'm going to rub it down. We're going to do that on the other side as well, and we're going to put these little finger projections along either side of the joint or muscle to support it. We're going to rub that down. See, so that's the Y cut. So the fan cut, again, is going to be one of the more difficult ones to lay down because you get all these little finger projections that want to stick to each other. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to pull each of these little finger projections, we're going to tear the paper to remove them from each other. We want them all to be free. So see, we got all those torn and free from the base now. So then we're going to remove the paper off the base, and I'm going to place the base on my arm. Now we always want the base to be up towards, going towards the heart, so if we're doing an extremity, then the base should be going towards the torso because we want to pump the blood and the lymph back towards the heart. So for this, we're going to take these little finger projections, one by one, we're going to pull the paper off and lay them down. Now with these finger projections, we want to have them going along wherever the swelling is. So we can take it and we can pull it this way, so it's going to go to the front of my arm as well. And we just want to kind of hit all of the swollen areas where we're trying to draw that blood and lymph out of there. And we're just going to lay these down. We always want to lay the finger projections down with just paper off tension. We don't want to pull on them. Just going to go paper off. Lay that down. We just kind of want to rub them down as we lay them down. This guy next. Now remember, if we were actually putting this on to try to reduce inflammation, we would do 2 of these fans, at least 2 of them, and crisscross the little finger projections to try to help bring more blood out of that area. So that's what the fan cutting is going to look like. Is that right there? And normally we would have another one going over it. So what are some common errors that people make? A lot of people, they will initially, they'll cut the tape, and like I said, they'll just kind of want to try to peel the paper off, and they'll have trouble with it. Or let's say that they rip it and they're good at getting the paper off, and then they just pull the entire thing off, and then they want to lay the whole thing on like this. This gets tricky. It tends to stick to itself. It sticks to areas that you don't want it to stick to. So I would not recommend removing all the paper. Do it just like I showed you, removing a little bit of paper at a time and laying it down. Another thing that we want to avoid is, let's say you go ahead and you put the tape down and then you go, oh, never mind, I don't want it there, I want it a little bit over here. Once you put it down and then if you rip it up and try to replace it, it's just not going to stick as well, so you're better off getting a fresh piece of tape and starting all over again. So those are the tapings. That is the I, X, Y, and fan.